The young man makes it sound like it's over, and we are only just beginning in this new reality. Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to NewsNation. A friend of mine suggested our tagline should be, "You may not like what we're going to tell you, but we will give you all sides of a situation." And that certainly applies tonight. People are worried, wondering what Trump is up to with his latest picks for major positions, and whether his apparent middle finger to the establishment may wind up not making things better. And by the way, I'm only talking about the Trump voters I'm hearing from. The irony that we're faced with now is that left and right are together in their concern for the moment, wondering about how these picks are reasonable, let alone serious. A weekend Fox morning host as Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who has never had a major leadership role at the Pentagon or really anywhere else. And now, a member of Congress steeped in controversy who was just investigated by the AG and is still being investigated by the House is Trump's pick for Attorney General, Matt Gaetz. This on top of Elon Musk at the Department of Government Efficiency, which doesn't exist yet. And oddly, the acronym for this new supposed agency happens to be the same as his cryptocurrency, Doge, D-O-G-E, Department of Government Efficiency. It's also his cryptocurrency. Is Trump expecting them to not get confirmed? Is he testing the Senate's fealty to his fancy, or does he really believe all he needs are people who are loyal to him and he can do everything else? Check this out. This election held real concerns about our democracy. People voted for Trump in part because they were worried the democracy had become a plutocracy, right? A system controlled by the wealthy, and that system was bordering on a kleptocracy, which is a system of people stealing from the government. Now it is a concern that Trump is really building a kind of perverse aristocracy where he is the king and they're mostly jesters around him. But it's looking more and more like a caucustocracy, which is rule by the least qualified. My only solution is to see how it goes. Let's see the confirmation process. Let's hear his rationale. Let's see if this is really real. And instead of that drama, focus on the people in place and what they will do to fix real problems. Now, top of the list of real problems that Trump may well move on is immigration. It could be his first major legislative initiative. Now, given that this crisis has been evolving over the years, I wanted to kind of break down how we got here, okay? Kind of looking at the last three presidents as what they faced when they came in and what they did with that, all right? Let's start with border crossing. So let's get the graphics going. Obama, we'll start with him. He left office 400,000 illegal border encounters. In Trump's first year, border crossings dropped to a record low of 300,000. Why? Tough talk on immigration, which served as a deterrent. In his last year, and then he had the home country agreements where he was facilitating deals where people kept processing in their own borders, within their own borders. His remain in Mexico, pressuring Mexico to put troops on the border with Guatemala and the border with the U.S. His last year, border encounters were at 400,000, okay? Now, why'd they go back up? Because the demand returned, okay? Now, you go to Biden. And Trump had set up Title 42, okay, which slowed down asylum because of the pandemic. That helped. In Biden's first year, though, border crossings skyrocketed to 1.7 million. Why? Wasn't talking tough about immigration, much more welcoming. There was a lot more instability in Latin America. There was a stronger U.S. economy post-COVID. You know, don't sleep on COVID as a factor in this. People weren't coming here because they were afraid of getting sick, or they were sick, and there weren't the same jobs, okay? And that was a big factor in suppressing the demand when Trump was in office, okay? Now, with a stronger economy, without COVID, you see crossings are like 5 times higher than when Trump left office. So what has he done? He has pledged to deport millions of illegal immigrants from the country. So let's compare how each president handled deportations. Obama's administration deported 240,000 migrants in 2016, but their enforcement policy focused, as does Biden's, on targeting criminals, not just those who only cross illegally. When Trump took office, his administration adopted a zero-tolerance policy, meaning everybody is seen as the same level of transgression, allowing immigration officials to deport anyone who crossed illegally. By 2019, deportations had reached a high of 267,000. During his last year, mostly due to COVID, again, they dropped. Biden takes office, his administration issues new guidance to the agents, telling them to target migrants who pose a national security or public safety threat. Okay, kind of like Obama, but maybe even more selective. Deportations, therefore, plummet because you're looking for a smaller band of people, 59,000 in his first year. Just recently, the Biden administration changed its enforcement policies, allowing agents to target migrants who also cross the border illegally. Deportations, of course, pop to 140,000. Migrants are coming to this country knowing that if they come and claim asylum, they can stay thanks to, in my opinion, a broken asylum system. 3 million migrants have pending cases. They wait on average 4 years just to get an asylum hearing. And remember, they're almost all released on their own recognizance, catch and release. So why would you come back if you know you're going to get thrown out? And that is what the system experiences. The question now is, what can Trump do to solve this crisis? And we have somebody who does not fit into the definition of people who are a head scratcher as to why they've been given the position by Trump they've been given. The man that we have tonight is arguably better than any man he could have picked within his reach, okay? Incoming border czar, Tom Homan. It's good to have you, Tom.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
The way I laid it out, pretty straight?
Yeah, there are a few things I disagree with you with, but I think it's more important, and you look at the numbers on the Biden administration, I care more about the numbers he released in the country more than I care about the deportation, because he released millions of people into the country where President Trump didn't.
And that is because, and please feel free to correct whatever assertions I made you don't agree with, you're the boss, but that is because Biden changed the definition of who the men and women doing enforcement should be looking for, correct?
No, that'd be ICE. He has changed the definition of who ICE should be looking for. He's made it clear, Secretary Mayorkas made it clear to ICE that being in the country illegally on its own without a criminal charge, if you're not a public safety threat or a national security threat, they're off the table. So they changed who ICE was looking for. But as far as the Border Patrol, they went from ending catch and release that the Trump administration had to releasing millions of people to the country. That's really the difference. And I blame that on ending the policies that were proven effective in the Trump administration. You know, look, I worked for 6 presidents, starting with Ronald Reagan. I've seen hundreds of policies come and go. I know what policies work, what policies doesn't. Love or hate Trump, the Remain in Mexico program was a game changer. People can still claim asylum, they wait in Mexico. That was a game changer, and after a few months, people stopped coming. Because when they realized they weren't going to be released in the United States, they weren't going to spend all their money, giving it to the criminal cartels, only to wait in Mexico. So, by doing that, by moving immigration that low to a 45-year low, less migrant deaths across the border, less women being sexually assaulted by the cartels, it had a really positive effect in the Remain in Mexico program.
First question is personal. You did the job. You just let people or reminded people how long you did the job. You were the acting director already. You then went into retirement after doing the job for the Trump administration for a while. They had your Senate confirmation up there. You didn't have to be confirmed originally because you were next in line for the job within the same agency. They pulled the confirmation. You retired. Why are you back?
Because I care. Chris, I've done this. I started as a border patrol agent in 1984, so I know what it's like to wear that uniform. And when I joined ICE, 1989, I spent decades with ICE. I was the first ICE director that actually came up through the ranks. So the 20,000 men and women that reported to me, I never asked them or told them to do anything that I didn't do myself because I was one of them. I cared. And I care because of the tragedies I've seen on the southwest border. You know, I've stood on the back of a tractor trailer with 19 dead people at my feet, including a 5-year-old little boy that begged to death. I've talked to little girls as young as 9 that were raped multiple times by a member of the cartel. And I can go on and on and on about the tragedies I've seen. I ran Operation Ice Storm in Phoenix, Arizona, where the cartels were ripping each other's house off, where they were holding illegal aliens waiting for the payment, and they're ripping each other off. And if a migrant couldn't pay his fees, they kill him. And before they kill him, they call the relative who's supposed to pay the fee, and they forced him to listen, torturing the man until they came up with the fees that they demanded. So out of all the tragedies I've seen, plus I love the men and women of the Border Patrol. They put their lives online every day. Same with ICE. This can be fixed. And we need to fix it because it's going to save American lives. It's going to save alien lives. It just makes sense. There's no downside in a secure border. And I have arguments a lot up on Capitol Hill. Give me one downside in a secure border. What's the downside in less illegal immigration? What's the downside in less fentanyl that killed 250,000 people? What's the downside in less sex trafficking of women and children, which is up now 600%? What's the downside unless people on terrorist watch list coming across the border? A secure border saves lives. A country can't have strong national security if we don't have border security. We got to know who's coming in, what's coming in, where it's coming in, why it's coming in. That's what national security is all about.
Tom, let's deal with the supply, and then we'll get to the migrants themselves. It used to be coyotes. Okay, now it's cartels. It's all you hear. And do you believe that instead of a national roundup of illegal entrants, our major focus of resources and political pressure on foreign countries should be on stopping the cartels in Mexico and the threat to Mexico that if they don't do it, and supposedly the new leader there is kind of against the idea of taking on the cartels, that will do it? And do you believe you could legally declare them terrorist organizations and use the military to go after cartels?
Well, look, ever since I gave the speech at the RNC, I've had numerous death threats from the cartels against me and my family. And matter of fact, my family isn't with me right now because of the death threats. But, President Trump has promised that he would designate them terrorist organizations. And I believe he should, and he will. And the reason why they should be designated terrorist organizations, the criminal cartels of Mexico have killed more Americans than every terrorist organization in the world combined. Now, I just said, 250,000 Americans dying from fentanyl poisonings, and up to 4,000 aliens have died crossing the border. So, these cartels are wreaking havoc in this country, and like I said, killed so many Americans. President Trump is committed to doing it, and I think he should, because the cartels are a national security threat to this country. You're getting a fentanyl from China. The precursors, they send it to the criminal cartels. The cartels make this poison and send it across the border. The border violence is now coming across into the United States. The criminal cartels of Mexico is like a Fortune 500 company. I mean, the Jalisco cartels is in 42 countries now. These criminal cartels that smuggle this poison over across our border, it used to be about smuggling into the United States. Now they have a presence in every major city of this country. Now they're taking over the distribution network within the United States. They need to be attacked. They need to be wiped out. Absolutely.
So why isn't that the primary focus instead of rounding up 14 million or whatever the number is people when all the cartel guys are bad? Not all illegal entrants in this country are bad. Most of them are here trying to build a better life and responding to the economic demands of our job market.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, there's more than one priority. The president has made it a priority. He's going to take on these criminal cartels and call them terrorist organizations and take them out of business, hopefully. The second, and there's parallel priorities. The president's been clear on the stage, and I've been clear. The priorities for the deportation operation are public safety threats and national security threats. The last time I looked at the data, we have over 700,000 illegal aliens in this country that have a criminal conviction and a final order that are walking the streets. So, we got that. That's our priority. And national security threats, those that are deemed by national security threat, either by the FBI or by intelligence communities that we know are here, they need to be, they're going to be a priority. But I'll say this. Let's talk about the other illegal aliens here. We've had millions of people encounter at our border, over 10 million, all right? Now, anybody goes to immigration court data, Executive Office of Immigration Review, you look at the data of the last decade. It says about 85%, I'm talking on average, about 85% of those who claim asylum at our southern border never get relief from the U.S. government because they simply don't qualify for asylum. Asylum is about escaping fear and persecution from your home government because your race, religion, and political affiliation or participation in a specific social group. So we know that millions of people come to the border. We know that average, almost 9 out of 10 will get an order removal. Now, you can't demand the U.S. government, because you have a right to claim asylum. You have a right to see a judge. You have the right to due process. But at the end of that due process, if a federal judge says, no, you must go home, if those orders aren't carried out, Chris, what the hell are we doing? Shut down the immigration court because the judge's order doesn't mean anything anymore. Shut down the Border Patrol because there's no consequence for entering this country illegally, which is a crime, by the way. Entering the country illegally is a crime. So you can't demand due process and right to see a judge, then ignore the final decision. Because what's the other option? We let them stay? Because then you send a message to the whole world. You can cross the border illegally, which is a crime. You can ask to go to court or not show up in court, get an order in absentia or get an order by a judge if you show up in court, and not be removed. Everybody in the world is going to come to the greatest nation on earth. We can't withstand it. Let me tell you why. What happened under this administration, they have overwhelmed the Border Patrol with millions of people, an historic record. It went from the most secure border in my career to a historic illegal immigration. Border Patrol's been overwhelmed. There's been times where Border Patrol, 70% of agents have been pulled off the line. Several times in the last 2 years, 100% of the agents have been pulled offline in certain sectors like El Paso and Yuma. Every uniform is taken off the line. But on average, 70%. When you take 70% of Border Patrol agents off the line to take care of this humanitarian crisis, take care of these people in these facilities, that's when the cartels take advantage. They'll send a group of 100 family units through an area, know, okay, we only got 30% of Border Patrol agents left. Let's send this group of families through. They'll seize to that opportunity. And what happens then? That's when they move the fentanyl that kills Americans. That's when they sex traffic women and children. That's when the bad guys come across that don't want to turn themselves into the Border Patrol. We got over 2 million gotaways. 2 million gotaways paid more to get away. You pay the cartels one amount of money to get to the border. The cartel's job ends at the border. Turn yourself in a green uniform. You get released within 24 hours. You get a free plane ticket to the city of your choice. You get a free hotel room. You get 3 meals a day, and you get medical care. Plus, you get work authorization in about 120 days. Why would 2 million people pay more not to take advantage of that giveaway program? Because they don't want to be vetted. They don't want to be fingerprinted. That's just scared the hell of all of us. They've arrested almost 300 people on the terrorist watch list. How many 2.2 were off the terrorist watch list? So what people think is innocent, illegal immigration causes all this other bad things to happen. That's why we have to secure the border.
I get it. And I don't think anybody's going to meaningfully argue the reality of the problem. I think it's about the fix. You know, I would never suggest that I know any of this stuff anyway that you have. I mean, you know, I've been doing this 25 years. I've been down there a bunch of times, done it at night, been with CBP on the river, been with the people who process the bodies, been with as many ways as I could go. And I promise you, for the duration of your service, I'll be a call away to come down and report on anything you want people to see. You call, I'll be there within 48 hours. I promise you that. That's the job, and I'm committed to doing it. I know the terrain. I know how to do that job. But the message has always been consistent. Physical borders help, but we're not a wall away from being safe. You want to help us here down on the border? Change the asylum rules and give us a lot more resources to hold people humanely, process them quickly, and send them back. No more catch and release, and go after the cartels. You know, nowhere on that list is what sounds good politically to people who voted for Trump, which is round them all up. He doesn't say the 700,000 like you just did. He says all of them.
Well, like I said, I think the president's been clear that there's going to be a prioritization of criminals, national security threats first. But look, as I just explained, you know, there's a system. There's a system in place in this country. There's laws that were passed by Congress, enacted by Congress, and signed by the president. And all the hate coming right now to the president, myself, all we want to do is enforce the law. And we're at a place now in this nation where if you want to enforce the law, you're a bad guy. And I think the president's been pretty smart about prioritization on this. And look, I'm telling you, you know, if we don't secure the border, I testified about this last time I testified. If we don't secure the border,
famously
more migrants are going to die, more women are going to be raped, we're going to have more Asian moms and dads in this country. There's no downside in a secure border. But you're not going to have a secure border if you don't have consequences. What's the option? Let me ask you the question, Chris. What's the option? So these people had due process, were ordered removed by an immigration judge because they don't qualify for asylum because they made a fraudulent asylum claim. And like I said, the Remain in Mexico program, once they knew they weren't being released in the United States, they stopped coming. And why is that? If you're really escaping fear and persecution from your home government, you're going to wait in Mexico to escape that fear and persecution. So, what is the option? Go through the whole process, have a federal judge order you deported and not deport them? Because you're never going to fix the southern border that way.
Look, I get it. And you're assuming they show up for the hearing. I get what the problems are. I'm just asking you to kind of think through the fix with people. And I'm happy to have you do it, Tom, because I respect how you've done the job and what you know about the job. And I also don't want you to just be known by my audience for your one back and forth with AOC. Look, your answers all made sense, except for one distinction. Legally, you were spot on with all of it. I'm not an enemy of AOC. I think, she believes in what she believes in. She's a socialist. But sometimes she has good points. But she didn't make the right point to you. The right point to make is, you want to go after the cartels, great. If you can do it as a terrorist organization, great. I think legally it may be tricky. Everything else you're suggesting makes total sense. Catch and release makes no sense. But this roundup idea, and I haven't heard Trump say it the way you have. So if you know better, great. And if it becomes more tailored the way you're suggesting, okay. But if you are just grabbing whoever you can grab, not only do you have families that get affected because they're not all here alone, but you lose like 1 in 8 of your construction workers, 1 in 8 of your agriculture workers, 1 in 8 of your 1 in 12 of your hospitality workers. You lose a lot of people that the economy needs. Not all illegal entrants are the same. Do you take account for that?
Well, look, I think, I'm not saying we're just looking for 700,000 people. I'm saying we're going to concentrate on public safety threats and national security threats. But if you're in the country illegally, you're here in violation of law. So you're not off the table. But we're going to prioritize what we do. So I don't think me and Trump's different at all. But I agree with your earlier premise. Look, Congress needs to do some work. I believe we should fix the asylum process because at your first interview on the border, when you claim asylum, that first interview, the threshold of proof is very low. And that was done on purpose because they don't want to accidentally send someone home and to be persecuted or tortured, right? But when you get to court, if you show up in court, that burden of proof is much higher. So these are real numbers. Like I said, about 90% of the people that come to the border and claim asylum under Biden administration, it's like 98%, they pass that first interview because they learn a few key phrases from the cartels of what to say to make yourself pass that first interview. Then when you get to court, if you show up in court, the burden of proof is much higher. And 90% lose, as you just said, almost 90% will get an order removal. That is broken. They need to fix that. First interview needs to be at the same level as the judicial interview. That will stop the asylum fraud. Second of all, the TVPRA, Trafficking Victims Protection Act, had a great intent to protect children with trafficking. But the law says this: if you're a child from Mexico and you're ascertained not to be a victim of trafficking, you're immediately removed. But if you're from any other country, you can't be removed. You got a whole process take years. The misuse of that statute has caused 500,000 children to be trafficked into this country. And the U.S. government can't find 300,000 of them. So that has caused the crisis. And finally, the Florida Settlement Agreement. Under President Obama, when the family groups started coming across, we detained them in a residential setting, open-air residential setting, not a jail. We held them about 40 days in this residential center. Most of them lost their cases. We put them on an airplane and sent them home. Border numbers stopped. The family unit stopped coming. Then the Ninth Circuit comes out and says, you can't hold them for 40 days. You can only hold them for 20. I remember in my affidavit, I said, if you do this and only hold them for 20 days, you're going to see a family surge like you've never seen before. Of course, I was called a fearmonger, no evidence, and look what happened. As soon as the Ninth Circuit made a decision, skyrocketed family groups. There is actions Congress can take. Because what I'm tired of is every president comes in, and I'm a Trump guy. He had more success on the border than any of the 5 presidents I worked for. But when a president comes in on an executive order and intentionally unsecures the border, which was happened, President Biden ran on open borders. He ran on abolishing ICE. He ran on ending ICE detention. He ran on putting a moratorium on deportations. He ran on free medical care. When you make this type of promise to the whole world, they're going to come to the greatest nation on earth. But instead of a president coming in and doing executive orders, every other president doing something different, Congress needs to fix this. We're not going back and forth and being a ping pong on immigration. Look, immigration enforcement is very controversial, it's very emotional. I get it. But we have to secure the border because a secure border is going to save lives.
So if Congress comes to you, last question, Tom, and I appreciate you being here. You have an open invitation for the duration of your service. Whenever you want to communicate to the audience, the answer is going to be yes. Congress says, all right, what 3 things do you need, Mr. Holman, to fix the problem on the border? What are your 3 things?
Fix the Florida settlement agreement. Let us detain families in the residential centers until they can see a judge, because most of them will lose, go home, and we'll send a strong message of consequence. The second thing is change the TVPRA, where children around the world are treated the same way as children in Mexico. So we can stop the child trafficking into the United States. Some of these children, the 300, and let me say, one of the priorities of the Trump administration, on top of securing the border and doing a deportation operation, we're going to try to find those 300,000+ children and save them, because I guarantee you, based on my 3.5 decades of work, some are in forced labor. We already found some in forced labor. ICE has already found some in forced labor. Some are going to be in sex trafficking. Some are living with pedophiles. Some of these children are living a life of hell. So we're going to find these children, rescue them, get them back with their families. But the TVPRA needs to be fixed. The asylum laws need to change. In the Florida settlement agreement, you would solve 85% of the problem on the southern border. And we got to end catch and release. If you come across the border, we'll detain you or remove you. And if you want to make an asylum claim, make an asylum claim. But you're going to wait in Mexico, so the 9 out of 10 that lose, we don't have to go look for you. You're not going to be in the United States building equities and having U.S. citizen children. All that makes it more difficult when you actually come down to removing somebody. So we got to make sense of the laws. Like I say, I've worked for 6 presidents. I see policies that work. And I'll say this. No one can argue the fact. You look at the data. President Trump was unprecedented in his success. I worked for 6 presidents. Every president I worked for, starting with Ronald Reagan, took steps to secure the border. Clinton and Obama took steps to secure the border because they understood you can't have national security if you don't have border security. But Joe Biden is the first president who came in office and unsecured the border on purpose. I don't get that.
Tom Holman, I appreciate you having an extended conversation about where your head is and what the problems are, what the solutions would be, and your obvious experience in the conditions of the reality down there. Thank you for doing it. Like I said, I'm a call away if you want me to come down and see what's going on, especially on the trafficking piece. Last word to you.
And I'm going to take you up on that, Chris, because when we start this thing, we need to be transparent to the American people. What I'm saying to you on this show, but what our prioritization is and what we're going to do, I want to show the American people we want to keep to our word and do that. So I'm going to count on you to keep track of what we're doing and help tell the story, because I think being transparent to the American people is going to be very important.
I'll come with NewsNation hats. Dinner's on us. Thank you very much for doing this service to the country, and we'll see how it goes.
Thank you, sir.
All right, good luck in doing the work of the people. 4 minutes and 5 seconds. Very interesting. One, can't lump him in with a lot of other Trump's choices. The man knows the situation that he's being asked to fix. And also, notice what he asked for. Rule changes, rule changes, rule changes. Okay? Not a wall. Physical barriers matter, but we are not a wall away from being safe. You got to change the rules. He made the case. What do you think about it? Now, on the Democrat side, what should they be focused on right now? One member of the party says he knows why the Democrats lost, and he felt his own party's backlash firsthand after he explained the position on trans rights from that community. What he's learned and what he wants everyone to know. Next. Our next guest is a leader in the Democratic Party. Now, but absolutely in the future. Checks a lot of boxes that you want in a leader. And he has been a fair critic of his own party, okay? Too much time trying not to offend people on the far left and having too heavy consequences for people who don't follow that rule. Now, he is a true blue Democrat, Congressman Seth Moulton. And he says, I know I'm right about this because I have felt the teeth of the people I'm talking about. His quote, I have 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete. But as a Democrat, I'm supposed to be afraid to say that. The response from some in his party was immediate. A Tufts University department chair threatened to ban students from interning in his office. A top Moulton aide quit, and many vowed to replace Moulton in Congress. He says that all the backlash just proves his point. And he joins us now. Good to see you, Congressman.
Good to see you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
So when you talk about this appraisal of your party and what it was, what do you isolate as the problem and the solution for you Democrats?
Well, look, there's no one problem with this election. I mean, we got wiped out across the board. There were things that the Harris campaign should have done differently, like separating herself from the president and simply answering questions about these contentious policy issues, having a response to Trump's attack on trans people, for example. That would have helped. But we also just have to have a fundamental reckoning as an entire party with the fact that a lot of Americans, the majority, don't trust us on a lot of core issues. And it's not just these culture issues, although I do think identity politics is part of the problem. It's also the economy. I mean, how is it that Trump comes in and says he's going to have policies to dramatically raise tariffs, cut taxes for billionaires, which will raise prices for everyday Americans, and yet Americans trust him more on the economy? How is it that we've got a border policy that's focused around just deporting millions of people that, if you believe the economists, will create a recession greater than the Great Depression because we'll lose so many workers, not to mention communities, families disrupted across the country? We had a bipartisan border deal, and yet the bottom line is people trust the Republicans more on immigration. So we got to look ourselves in the mirror as Democrats and say, how do we reconnect? How do we reconnect with the majority of American voters? Because we've clearly lost touch.
You know, I've been getting some heat also, but that's what I signed up for. You know, having your own party go after you is a little bit of a new experience. Democrats do that more often than Republicans. But I call it the woke to broke ratio. There's nothing wrong with being woke. There's nothing wrong with wanting to protect minorities and protect the marginalized. And I got to be honest, I don't believe there's a good chance that your girls are going to encounter somebody our size playing against them on the field. But I get why, as a theory, one would be too many. I get it. It's not a high-risk problem, but one is too many. You look weak in that argument. But you guys didn't focus enough on owning. You can talk about it. That's fine. But you can't just punish people for not agreeing with you on it. And you didn't care enough about the status quo and who was hurting in terms of gas, grocery, rent, health insurance. It seemed like Harris was having to mitigate those issues because they were on her watch.
Well, that's right. But look, I mean, we subbed her in for Biden because he was losing the election, right? It was a tough decision. It came late. But the bottom line is that's why we made the switch. So her number one priority should have been separating herself from the president. And I said very early on, not just to her advisors, but also publicly, separate yourself on the border. Just get out there and say, our immigration policy hasn't worked. I'm going to do it differently. Even on just that one issue, showing some distance from the president, showing that you can respect Joe Biden but disagree with him on some policies and pledge to do things differently, I think that would have really transformed the race for Harris. I'm not saying it's all on her shoulders. Like I say, we've got some real problems just as a party as a whole. We love to preach down to people, tell them when they're morally wrong without doing enough listening about the real concerns of everyday Americans. But there are some things that the Harris campaign could have done differently. The bottom line is we got to have a reckoning about all of this stuff, because if we don't come up with a new strategy, a winning strategy going forward, then we're never going to be able to stop the Trump agenda.
If you watch what Trump does, there'll be opportunity for you to connect with workers, because as you suggested, it's the only populist movement where the economic policies aren't really geared to the working class. So there'll be opportunity there. But isn't immigration also an opportunity? The way Holman lays it out, he doesn't say what Trump says. He wants rule changes that make sense. And he says, I'm going to round up the 700,000 we believe have criminality that was unchecked. why shouldn't Democrats jump in with Republicans and say, we're for all of that? We do have to change these rules. If you just want to go after the ones that are criminals, that's great. That's fine. And join them instead of having them fix it, ram it through your faces, and then own the win.
Well, Chris, we did. We supported the bipartisan immigration deal in the Senate.
Yeah, but that bill was weak, Seth. That was a weak bill.
Well, look, I'm not saying it was perfect, but let's not forget it was one man, Donald Trump, who killed it so that he could run on this issue. He is the king of politicizing the border. And let's also not forget that when Donald Trump controlled the White House, the House, and the Senate for 2 years, back in 2016, they did nothing for immigration reform. They did nothing to fundamentally fix this problem. They didn't do any of the things that Tom was just saying they needed to do. So you just can't trust Republicans to do anything but play politics with immigration. I agree with you that Tom sounded reasonable and even a little bit compassionate, I will say, about some of the ways he was describing the changes that we need to happen. And we do need a secure border. There are some people in my party who disagree with me on this. Absolutely, it's a problem. It's a national security problem. I'll be the first to say that. But let's not forget the history here, that repeatedly Democrats have come to the table working with Republicans, proposing bipartisan reform deals, and it's consistently Republicans, whether in Congress or at the White House, that have killed these deals. So I just don't know who to trust, right? Homan has some reasonable policies, some reasonable laws that need to be changed and adjusted. I would support many of those changes myself. But can we actually trust that Trump won't just do what he said on the campaign trail? Remember when he said he was just going to ban Muslims? All kinds of people, Republicans included, said he's not going to really do that. That's not upholding American values. That's not legal. Well, he found a way to do it. And I just worry that Trump is going to find a way to do the worst things that he has talked about on the campaign trail. It always seemed back in his first term that, he would propose some terrible ideas and he'd end up doing something worse. So people should be concerned. I want to work with people like Tom Homan. But I'm very skeptical of what Trump's real intentions are here.
Well, there's a short list that he's put out so far of people that Seth Moulton is going to be happy working with, because I don't see you calling up Attorney General Gates anytime soon and wanting to work on anything. Congressman, you are welcome here to discuss the issues as they develop for the duration. Thank you for coming and being a fair broker.
Good to see you, Chris.
All right, Congressman, take care. Seth Moulton. 3 minutes, 45 seconds. So, just hours ago, government transparency. That's what UAPs or UFOs is about for me, okay? If they have programs and there's hundreds of millions of dollars going in, you gotta tell us something, all right? A government whistleblower made some shocking claims on the stand. What did he say? Hear it from him next. Plus, busy couple of weeks. Let's get some perspective from someone who knows how to work the laugh or cry ratio. Adam Carolla, coming up.
I've seen the documentation by the U.S. government for several of these individuals who have sustained injuries as a result of a UAP incident.
Now, I like the questioning, direct, focused. However, she knew those answers. So the question is, why aren't they pushing the ball forward more? Let's ask the man that you just saw there. Former military intelligence and counterintelligence officer Luis Elizondo joins us now. Thank you for making your witness today. I want the audience to know you're also author of Imminent, Inside the Pentagon's Hunt for UFOs. Luis, thank you for being with us.
Chris, thank you so much for having me.
So were you worried about what you were going to say today?
Yeah, absolutely. But I got to say, Chris, I think this was really a historic day for both Congress and for the American people. I think it was a win-win. This is now the second hearing on this topic that's been open to the public. And hopefully the public is now getting an understanding of how long our government has actually been involved in this topic, despite decades of denial.
So, look, the pushback is they're no little green men. They don't have a spaceship from outside our solar system. All of these types of videos that I'm showing right now can be explained. Well, then what are they finding? This is what you did. And you're risking your reputation to come forward and speak what you say is the truth. So what do they know?
Well, Chris, first of all, I'm risking more than my reputation. I'm risking my security clearance and my ability to even earn a living. So I think it's important to know that we have absolutely been able to confirm the existence of some sort of technology that has the ability to operate with anonymity within our controlled U.S. airspace, operate over our sensitive military installations, and possibly interfere with our nuclear equities. Now, if that's not a national security concern, I don't know what is.
Now, that's why they say, so, okay, yeah, it's some other country or it's some other concern or corporate concern on Earth, and that's why they don't tell us, because it's too dangerous. What do you say to that?
So, Chris, let's look at this from a temporal perspective. Okay, we've been dealing with this for decades, and documents now have been submitted to Congress that prove without a shadow of a doubt, since the early 1950s, we've been dealing with this issue. And when I say dealing with this issue, I'm talking about objects that still to this day can operate beyond any type of performance characteristics of our modern aircraft. So I would say, look, if one were to say, well, maybe this is Russia or China today, okay, but that doesn't explain the 1950s and 60s where these aircraft were captured on radar doing 10,000, 13,000 miles an hour in a low Earth atmosphere. Okay, what we have in comparison pales. For example, the Lockheed YF-12A SR-71 can do about 3,200 miles an hour at an unclassified level, which is pretty fast. And when it wants to take a right-hand turn, it takes roughly half the state of Ohio to do that. And what we are seeing are objects that are doing 10,000, 13,000 miles an hour and are able to execute an immediate right-angle turn, do 180 degrees, pop in and out of our atmosphere, and even underwater. So where were we in the 1950s? Well, we had barely broken the sound barrier and hadn't even made it into space. What other near-peer country even existed at that point that to this day can perform like that? The answer is we can't. And if there was a country that could do that, Chris, this would be the greatest intelligence failure this country has ever faced, even eclipsing that of 9/11 by an order of magnitude, because despite the billions of dollars we pour in investment into our intelligence community, not a single thread of intelligence over the last 7 decades has given us an indication that some adversary has developed this technology in secret and been able to deploy it effectively.
And if they had it 7 decades ago, what would they be doing with it today? And nobody is, and that raises questions also. Mr. Elizondo, anytime you want to talk, anytime there are developments, or there should be and there have not been, you have an open invitation.
Thank you, Chris. My honor and privilege. Thank you very much.
We'll speak again. Thank you, sir. Now, you keep hearing me say, don't worry, you're a call away, I'll invite you back. People need a platform to say things that fall out of vogue. People need a platform to say things that people are worried about getting in trouble for letting them say. That's why NewsNation is here. Now, I haven't checked in with my brother from another in quite some time. Joining me, the host of the Adam Carolla Show. Adam, how you doing, bud? A couple of things have happened since I last talked to you.
Yeah, I mean, the Dodgers won the World Series. Nothing else comes to mind, but we can keep dialoguing.
So Trump comes in. Everybody says, wow, that was a big win. Let's see how he does it. And he starts naming people that Tom Homan, I just had him on the show. The guy's legit. Attorney General Gates. Did you think you would ever hear that?
No, I didn't. And, you know, to be fair, I'm not really a news wonk. I'm a comedian. But, of course, I'm interested in all these subjects and try to pick a comedic sort of angle on them. And so as far as Gates goes, I only know the cartoon version of him that I might hear on MSNBC or read in the Los Angeles Times. So I really don't know the real version of him, because with all of these people, including Trump, there's the cartoon version of them that you hear in mainstream, and then there's this sort of real version of them. Because guys like you and I get to sit down with these people and actually have conversations with some of them, and you're always surprised that, oh, this guy's not a joke or an SNL sketch.
It's interesting, though, you know, Dusty had a good joke. She was like, didn't he ever hear, don't quit your day job? Because a lot of people are believing that Trump set him up to get dinged by the Senate. But we'll see. You got him. You got Pete Hegseth as the Secretary of Defense. The theory of it is Trump is creating a syndicate of people who will be loyal only to him and tell him who's out to get him in the agencies that they run.
Well, look, everything's on the table with Trump, but I got to say, I have interviewed Tulsi Gabbard, and I've interviewed Kennedy, and I've interviewed Vivek Ramaswamy, and I find these people to be substantial, earnest, interesting, well-pedigreed and well-educated people who are also patriotic as well. So I'm not as concerned about it as a lot of the people are, and I don't know if this is a self-fulfilling prophecy off of the dictator Hitlerian stuff and a sort of continuation of it or not, but like when I hear that Elon and Vivek are getting together for the Department of Government Efficiency, I'm over the moon about it.
Look, I have no problem bringing in people on the outside, and you happen to have picked people who definitely have bona fides. I just wish they hadn't named the new department the same thing as the guy's cryptocurrency. I mean, don't make it so easy for people to scream conflict of interest. They named the thing after Dogecoin. Why would they do that? They're begging for criticism.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's gonna, I don't know how much of Trump is, baiting and how much of it is oversight, and if it's all just an elaborate play and we've been cast in it, and maybe there's not even a real Donald Trump. Maybe there's a very small Jewish man that inhabits this costume of Trump that goes around agitating and intimidating. So we're all part of the parade now, which is interesting. But in general, I'll take anything over status quo.
You people should know this. Adam has a humongous and important and historic podcast. He's been in it a long time. So has Rogan. Rogan is a 15-year overnight success. Do you believe that the podcast has arrived as a position of consequence in mainstream politics?
Yeah, I think that's indisputable at this point. When I started almost 16 years ago, most people referred to what I was doing as a pod cart, and there was no money and there was no way to advertise. There was really nothing. It was, basketball when they were using a wooden bushel as a hoop, essentially, and everyone was short and white when I started. And now I think if you want to make a serious run at something, you have to go through podcasting. I mean, 4 years ago, just 4 years ago, that didn't exist.
People keep saying it. As you know, I have a podcast and I love your podcast. And, Rogan has the best guests of conversation that you can ask for. I mean, he has thought leaders in all these different areas. They say it like it's a bad thing, that, mainstream media is dead. Hey, man, that's what they said about network TV when cable came into the news business, and they've all found their own way. Can't more just be better because you get more diversity of thought as long as you don't get into the censorship game?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, when the VHS tape came out, they said that'll be the end of movie theaters in 1977. They've hung around for a while. There's always the doom and the gloom. The reality is of the United States is we make the pie deeper. We have way too much talk about this guy's got all the money. Where's my money? This guy's got all the eyeballs. Where are my eyeballs? Nobody's taking anything from anyone else. Come up with a good product. Come up with a better widget, come up with a better podcast, and then you'll get your eyeballs. And also this thing of like, he's going to go on this show and be ambushed, or go on that show and be ambushed. You can't be ambushed. Sit down, speak your mind, answer questions, ask your own questions. How is it unfair? I really wish we'd do away with that. Like, he's going to go over to Fox and get ambushed, or he's going over to CNN, he's going to get ambushed. Like, you can't ambush me. I get to bring my brain in my mouth.
What is the best joke you've come up with so far to deal with the process of this last election?
Oh, God. I haven't even written anything down yet. I'll give you a quick Biden joke because I got to get rid of all my Biden jokes now that he's heading out. A quick, clean Biden joke is, if people think you're too old for the job, perhaps you should stop weaving in the word malarkey into every conversation.
I'll take it. I think malarkey goes out with Biden. And I think that Trump will just go with the straight old bullshit. I think we'll be hearing that word all the time whenever he's feeling it. Adam Carolla, I look forward to living the next cycle along with you here and on the podcasts. You're always welcome. You're always value added. It's great to see you.
Thanks, my friend.
All right, bud. And that ain't a bunch of malarkey. I'll tell you that right now. Look,